Yo, what's going on? I'm your host, Chedda Chaz. Welcome to today's stream. We're talking about the Pelicans draft targets. It's been a crazy day. Phone going off. I'm gonna be doing a lot of checking my phone for updates, seeing if anything wild's happening. The Mark Stein reports come out saying that Brandon Ingram is likely to be traded this week. Well, more likely than Paul George. I'll say that, like for some context, to say Brandon Ingram is likely to be traded, and he's potentially played his last game as a New Orleans Pelican. That could have a lot of impact on what the Pelicans decide to do in the draft. The Pelicans, as we all know, desperate for a defensive big. Some would say a little too desperate. I didn't think Jonas Valanciunas did a bad job this year, but it's not the archetype they're looking for. So today we're going to get into a few different draft prospects. Now, some of these could change depending on what the Pelicans decide to do in the draft. You see a lot of things surrounding Klingon. Look like Klingon might go number one, man. And that's very interesting. It's very interesting. He looks like Calvin Cobby or Rudy Gobert. I don't know, man. Alex Saw, he seems like he's trying to force his way to Washington. That's really interesting. Reed Shepard seems like the given at pick 3. If Houston decides to keep that pick, because Houston has been shopping the number 3 pick. Of course, the Pelicans, they called about potentially moving Brandon for Sagoon. I'm sure that, we saw that got just 86, not happening, right? But did those conversations continue, and will those conversations involve pick 3? See a lot of rumors about Brandon Ingram with the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know. Will the Pelicans get crazy and decide like, hey, it's time to make a big splash? We really like Klingon. He checks every box the Pelicans would like, aside from like the 3-point shooting. He checks every box defensively. So it's interesting. It's interesting if they make a Godfather offer and try to get pick 1. And if you can do that in any draft, this would probably be the draft that it's most likely, because this isn't like a draft people love. So let's get right into it, man. I'm going to start off with everyone's favorite. Our guy, Edey from Purdue. Ironically, I saw someone compare Edey to what did they say, like a super Jonas Valanciunas, or Jonas Valanciunas with 4 or 5 inches taller, something along those lines. I like Zach Edey a lot. I feel like Edey, his measurements and things in the combine blew a lot of people away. A lot of people were shocked by his agility, lateral movement, things of that nature. I feel like this guy is going to be an impact player in the league. Reminds me a bit of Zubac. This as far as his size, but his mobility, it's up there. It's up there. I honestly feel like this is a guy who can come in and start for you right away. Truthfully, feel like he can start for you right away. And I feel like as he progresses, he's going to give defenses hell. I feel like he's going to give defenses hell. Seriously. And I don't know. The Pelicans, they attempted to bring in Edey for a workout. I think Edey canceled at the very last minute. But the fact that they were even willing to bring him in for a workout, that goes to show me there has to be at least some level of interest. So if the Pelicans, this is totally hypothetical, if the Pelicans, manage to do something, make some type of move with the Utah Jazz, and Edey is still on the board. I believe the Jazz have pick 9, if I'm not mistaken, pick 9 or 10. If the Pelicans are able to move up in the draft, I think a guy like Edey would be a prime candidate for, being selected with that pick. And that's if they don't get like a, Kessler or something along those lines. But I do think a guy like Edey will be a prime candidate for that pick. I like Edey, man. I've become a fan. I don't know if I'm buying into the hype. That could be the case. Maybe I'm just a victim of all of the hype and I'm being programmed to like this guy. But I think Edey is a hell of a player. Another guy you look into, I think the Pelicans are a huge fan of, is Donovan Klingon. Now, this is a Hail Mary. Total Hail Mary. Klingon goes number 1. Right now, the Pelicans seem to be in, heavy negotiations with the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know what the Pelicans have on the table right now. I wouldn't, man, truthfully, nothing would shock me. The Pelicans just, is it at 9 is crazy for Edey. I don't know, man. I don't know, bro. I don't know. It depends on how much they like him, man. I don't know. They brought him in. He canceled the workout. I don't know if he has a promise for somebody, but it's interesting to me that Edey canceled his workout and you have the Utah Jazz looking to move Kessler. So I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's just interesting to me. But the Pelicans seem to be in heavy negotiations with Atlanta. I don't know what's necessarily on the table aside from Brandon Ingram. I don't know, man. Do they say, hey, we got Brandon Ingram and Herb. We just want Murray and number one? Like, I don't know. I don't know. But Clingan, I like what I saw on tape from Clingan. The only thing, I feel like Clingan's going to have some issues in the pick and roll. I feel like he's going to have some issues in the pick and roll, man. And that kind of scares me as a Pelicans fan. I just feel like because the Pelicans don't have a lot of defense at the point of attack. So if someone puts Clingan out there, it's just gonna, man. I just think it's gonna look crazy. I don't know, but hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully he becomes Rudy Gobert 2.0. That seems to be like the comp for him. And he's a hell of a player. Plays with a lot of attitude, a lot of energy. Seem to have some dog in him. And we're gonna see. Is there any hope? Let me see. Is it any chance at Trey? Man, everything I've ever heard about Trae Young and David Griffin is that David Griffin does not like Trae Young. That's everything I've ever heard. But here's the crazy part. David Griffin lies a lot. Like, he lies a lot. So I don't know if that's a smoke screen he put out there. Like, you just never know, man. You never know with David Griffin. That's the crazy part. It's like some things you do know is like he's a value shopper, or he has a great affinity for Brandon Ingram. But other things, like some of the things I've heard behind the scenes and what actually came to pass has been totally different. He don't like winning it would seem that way, right? Excuse me. It seemed like he don't like winning. Say, do I think a deal gets done? Man, we was talking about this today. I don't know, bro. I really don't know. There's a lot of smoke, but there was a ton of smoke around the Scoot thing. Like when the Scoot thing was going on, when Brandon Ingram or Zion were rumored to be available for that number 2 pick, it was a lot of smoke, bro. It was a lot of smoke. Like, I'm talking about weeks before it kind of made it to the public. Like, behind the scenes, there were a lot of talks about Scoot coming in, for scouting. Like, the Pelicans wanted to get a close look at him. They loved it when they interviewed him. Like, they really wanted Scoot Henderson, but apparently they didn't want him enough to trade for him. And that made me just like question everything I thought I knew about the Pelicans. Maybe where? Oh, I haven't covered where yet. Let's talk about them now, since I see 2 people brought them up. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. Shout out to David, Nick, Sam, Hollywood. I see y'all. Where very, very promising candidate. Man, the thing. See, David Griffin is a bizarre cat. Like, he's huge on character. So some of the things that have come out about Ware's character have been questionable. Questions about his motor, questions about his motivation out there. Will he be a responsible young adult out there? I think you've seen a lot of flashes of the Pelicans shifting away from the Jackson Hayes archetype, as far as like guys who they're young, like they have the talent there, but the maturity isn't there. And that's also a reason why I think you see David Griffin have some issues with Trae Young, because of the rumored immaturity. Right now, there's a lot of questions and rumors around Khalil Ware's maturity. I mentioned his motor and things like that. Personally, I think you have to take a chance on guys like this if they become available, because let's say he had some questionable motor issues. Once he comes to your team, it's your job as a professional to work on these things. It's your job as a professional, as a GM, as an organization to motivate this guy. It's your job. He's a young man. It's your job to help nurture him into his adulthood as a professional. And I feel like too often the Pelicans don't want to do the work. And I think that's why you see them. They've had some success drafting upperclassmen, but I think that's why you see them lean more towards upperclassmen. Sleeper pick at 21, Terry Shannon. Okay, tell me a little bit about Terry Shannon. I haven't looked at Terrence. Tell me a little bit about him. We never seen Z. in the playoffs together. You really don't think we should run it back one more time? No, I don't, brother. I think, honestly, brother, I think last off season was the time to move Brandon Ingram. Truthfully, because this time last season you could have gotten the number 2 pick. Now you'll be lucky if you get a top 10 pick for Brandon Ingram. Also, he's an expiring player, and if you were to extend him, now you're in like I mentioned before, you're in a Tobias Harris situation. You're in a Zach LaVine situation where you have an underperforming player locked into a long-term contract. It's going to be really difficult to move. Like, truthfully, not that this has totally happened with Brandon Ingram, but what you saw what Tim Legler said yesterday on ESPN, and a couple people agreed. And this goes for any organization or any like entity or industry. Once the industry starts to turn against you, it's very hard to repair your image. You've seen it with Trae Young. You've seen it with Carmelo. You know what I'm saying? You've seen it with other players. Like, once the industry is saying, hey, this guy is this, it don't matter how true it is. It's just once that's your perception, I think it's going to be very difficult to move a player like that. And I think we've seen enough, man. They've played enough. You're talking like, what, 3 coaches at this point? They were really healthy last season. Realistically, what would change in the playoffs, like aside from Zion being available? To me, Brandon's at his best when he's taking the lion's share of the shots. So if Zion's available, Brandon's probably not getting the lion's share of the available looks. What else does Brandon do to affect winning? And that's really some of the struggles I think you see with teams even looking to trade for him, or the Pelicans looking to trade him. If we had vested respect and maturity, it wouldn't be CJ cool, but I don't think, man, I think they respect CJ, bro. I just think CJ gets a bad rap because he was always paired with Dame. So it looked like, oh, that's Dame partner. You Dame, little homie. Like, it looks like that. Like, CJ's never been the best player. So I think that's where it, and recently, this is older CJ. This ain't 29, 28-year-old CJ. So this CJ don't show up in the playoffs. So it's tough, man, to, really listen to that guy. But truthfully, I do think CJ has had a positive effect on some guys. This season, he came into camp in incredible shape. Earlier in the season, to start the season, CJ was the best player on the Pelicans. Like, the first few games before he went down with that lung injury, he was the best player. You move BI for a point guard, you got to move on from CJ too. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you move on from if possible, you can move on from him now. But I think for CJ, I think that's more of a deadline move. You know what I'm saying? I think CJ is more of a deadline move, because then you'll have teams who might feel like, yo, CJ is the missing piece. We just need a CJ McCollum off the bench, and we'll give you a couple picks for him. Or we just need that extra offensive punch. And CJ is going to be like a $30 million expired trade salary next offseason or next season. So his trade market is ascending. You know what I'm saying? Slashing and scoring. Yeah, CJ ain't no number 2 option at this stage in his career. He probably not a number 3 option at this stage in his career, to be honest. Slashing, scoring, 2-way wing with Leslie. Okay, Jalen Williams. Like, yo, I'm a big fan of J-Dub. Man. That dude is nice. I honestly think I think Dyson and Najee being traded in this. Yeah, I think Najee, if you can, at this point, if you can do a sign and trade with Najee to get a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft, I think the Pelicans would really look to do that, because the Pelicans only have 1 2nd-round pick, because remember, they had to give up 4 2nd-round picks for Devontae Graham to move Devontae Graham to avoid the luxury tax. So if you don't move on from beyond that Zion trade request come, yeah, probably. I think if they fall into the same situation this year, whether it's fair, because Zion don't really have much leverage in the situation, but I think if they fail again this year, I think I think this is probably the last time you see Zion even in a Pelicans uniform. Because I think they'll go into it saying, hey, let's not make the same mistake twice. Let's move on from Zion at his peak. Or at minimum, you see a major front office change. Like I think you see David Griffin out of here if they fail again this year. Because I think then you see the frustration from Zion's camp return. You think Beyond Larius and picks will move some teams, maybe throw Dyson or not? I think so. Because Larry, that's expiring salary. A lot of teams probably still have, promise for Dyson. No, you know what I'm saying? They probably still think Dyson is a potential wing. I don't think anyone views Dyson as this potential starting point guard of the future. I think Dyson is, probably viewed more so now as a Andre Roberson at best, like if he develops his 3-point shot, or a younger version of Herb Jones potentially. But the thing is, if you believe Dyson, let's say Pelicans, for example, if they believe Dyson Daniels has Herb Jones potential, because that's why he was drafted, because the line of thinking was, well, man, what if we drafted Herb Jones at 19 years old? That was the line of thinking in drafting Dyson Daniels. If they still believe that, I wouldn't be shocked to see Herb on the table. And I mean, I'm not advocating for that unless it's for a superstar, but it wouldn't shock me. By LaMelo. Yeah, I like LaMelo a lot, but man, that family, man, they just stay hurt, man. God bless them. I hope all of them will bounce back. It's just, I don't know, man. They just got terrible luck, bro. Like it's sad. I hope they all right. We had some kind of glitch. But yeah, I hope they're all right, man. I hope they're okay. Let's get back into another guy plays in the backcourt. Isaiah Collier out of USC. Great at getting downhill. A lot of strength. Can attack the bucket. Played another guy who got that dog in him. Only problem is his shooting. And, the Pelicans have invested so heavily into guys who can't shoot, specifically on the perimeter, man. I don't know if they want to do that again. In a situation like this, if the Pelicans stay at 21 and a guy like Isaiah Collier falls to 21, I think you have to take him, right? But, man, you're really hoping that he can shoot. Like you're going to be pouring a lot of resources into him developing some shooting ability. The Pelicans still have Coach McGuire. Fred Vincent's gone. They'll probably promote Coach McGuire, another shooting coach who's worked with the guys there, and you're gonna have to spend a lot of time and resources developing him. That's also one of the reasons why I'm fearful of the Pelicans drafting a big, especially one who isn't polished. And we're gonna get into the guy I'm talking about in a second, but because you draft a center who has just raw talent, or any player. You draft a player who's just raw athleticism and doesn't really have a polished skill set. You haven't really shown that you can develop these raw players. Like you couldn't develop Jackson Hayes. You couldn't develop Kyra Lewis. You have to draft some guys who are coming into the league with a skill set. I joke about this all the time, man. And, I kind of got in trouble with the team for joking about stuff like this. I got a little trouble with the team. But the Pelicans organization is BYOB. It's bring your own bag. It's bring your own bag. Because you get drafted to the Pelicans, 9 times out of 10, you ain't going to develop much. I mean, really think about it. What has Zion developed since he's been with the Pelicans? What did Nickeil Alexander-Walker develop? What did Jackson Hayes develop? What did Kyra Lewis develop? What has Trey Murphy developed to this point? You got Herb Jones. He's developed a jumper a bit. What has Dyson Daniels developed? It's something to think about, man. It really is something to think about. It's time to draft a shooter, proven shooters. Fred Gons. Yeah, I agree, man. It's time to really start getting some guys who are plug and play. It's time to really start getting some dudes who ready to contribute immediately. Like guys, you don't have to send to the G League for months at a time, weeks at a time to get them some run. You need some guys who are ready to contribute. Either get some, if you're going to be drafting at this stage, should the Pelicans want to compete, if you're going to be drafting at this stage as New Orleans Pelicans, you have to get some young guys who are ready to contribute immediately. It's no time to be like, oh, we're going to send him to Birmingham and hopefully, he'll pick up some skills there. And it's like, when has that worked for the New Orleans Pelicans? Thus far, I haven't seen it work. Let me see. That's why I haven't seen it work at all. D tripping guys have developed since coming to the team. Name me 3 players that developed since coming to the Pelicans. I give you all the time you want. Name me 3 players that developed. Because who have you had? Yeah, Zion, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jackson Hayes, Kyra Lewis Jr., Dyson Daniels, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy. Out of all those players I just named, name me 3 that have developed since coming to the Pelicans. I'll wait. So another guy, Yves Missi, I really don't want to mispronounce his brother's name, but another guy the Pelicans have a lot of interest in seemingly, but he's in that Jackson Hayes mold. Athleticism off the charts. You know what I'm saying? Attitude off the charts. Room to be a very mature guy. Only issue is he's only been playing basketball for like 6 years. In this, maybe 5 years. He's only been playing basketball about 5 or 6 years. So he's probably has next to no skill at this stage of his career. And again, this is in that Jackson Hayes mold, man, to where you draft a guy like this, rim running big and probably defend the rim a little bit. But what else can he do? And are you going to get, like, the Pelicans on the team that are in position to play a lot of young guys? For one, the Pelicans typically don't play rookies. They don't play rookies. And the Pelicans aren't a team that's in position to give a young guy heavy minutes, especially not at the 5, because Willie Green is a super defense first coach. So if you play a young guy like that and it's, he's not really giving you what you need out the gates, then you're going to send him to Birmingham. And how long is he going to be in Birmingham? Are you going to be in another Jackson Hayes situation? What changes have you made to the coaching staff? Who has you brought in developmental wise to help these young guys along, specifically help these young 5s along? Because you got a guy like Carlo, who was a 2nd round pick. He's probably staying in Europe this year. He's probably going to stay in Europe. He's a guy who still, he started playing basketball late in life. He's going to need a lot of work. You got EJ Liddell. EJ Liddell's about 6'7", if I'm not mistaken. So he's not a traditional big. So, man, it's going to be tough. But the Pelicans seem to really have an eye for Yves. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Maybe it's all a smoke screen, but they seem to really be impressed with this young man. And I would not be shocked if the Pelicans hold on to pick 21. I would not be shocked to see them just roll the dice. I don't think he's a starting center at this stage. He's a rookie. It's unreasonable for the Pelicans to think a rookie, especially a rookie. Yeah, it was dumb not taking Tyrese Maxey, bro. It was so dumb. It was so dumb. And the Pelicans were a coin flip away from getting Tyrese Halliburton. It's tough. That's just how it goes sometimes, bro. When you're a Pelicans fan, that's just how it goes. Zion scores 40, pulls his hamstring. The Pelicans just like the number 1 team in the league. Zion tears his hamstring. Yeah, it was a hamstring tear. I'm putting that out there to y'all. It wasn't, they put out that it was like, oh, he's okay, but it was a tear. It was a very significant injury last season to Zion's hamstring. But yeah, man, that's just the way things happen for the Pelicans. In your opinion, what are we supposed to do and how? Because it seems like anything we do ain't going to work. Nah, I mean, several avenues you could take. You can go out and get a guy like Kessler. You can go out, and create some salary cap space. Maybe you sign a stopgap guy in Andre Drummond. There's a lot of different avenues you could take to address the position. You can even, if the Pelicans do this rumored deal with DeJounte Murray for Brandon Ingram. It's DeJounte Murray and Clint Capella for Brandon Ingram, let's say, and Larry Nance. You can have Clint Capella as a stopgap. Clint Capella is a $22 million expiring salary. You can use Clint Capella's salary to go out and get you the big you want or a young big. Or maybe if you able to get a couple seconds back in a trade for Brandon Ingram or whatever package they decide to put together. Maybe you call Charlotte and say, hey, can I get Nick Richards since you guys are leaning into the Mark Williams process? Yeah, we need to hire Rondo. I mean, I've been begging for them to hire Rondo for years, bro. I'm going to be sick if Rondo go to the Lakers. I'm going to be sick. I've been begging for this team to hire Rondo for years. Any center you see that has Derek Lively potential, I think Ware has it. And that's moving back. I mean, it's only moving backwards if you're not thinking ahead. I mean, where are you with Brandon? Nowhere. Like, you got swept in the playoffs with Brandon. You've been a perennial play-in team with Brandon. I mean, if the Pelicans trade Brandon and end up back in the play-in, they didn't lose any ground. They stayed exactly where they were. And this year, everyone was healthy. So imagine how they would look if they ran the same team back and you didn't have Zion playing 70-plus games. You didn't have Brandon playing 60-plus games. And you got to pay Brandon $52 million moving forward. That's moving backwards because now you're stuck in purgatory. And the Pelicans on a luxury tax team. So, let's see. We need the high Lively. Yeah, I think Ware. You got Ware. Even Eves. But see, the difference with Derek Lively, because the Pelicans were very interested in Derek Lively. The difference with between Derek Lively and those guys is that they had two Hall of Fame backcourt players. You know what I'm saying? The Pelicans, they really need some help in the backcourt. Also, if they go out and get like a rim running big, the Pelicans don't really have a player on the team that can throw a lob. So it makes the vertical spacing like nearly like irrelevant because like the Pelicans got multiple issues on the team. I know a lot of it is focusing on the front court in that center position because that's what's been out there. But the Pelicans have significant backcourt issues too. Like Jose Alvarado, solid player, but you need to really be looking to upgrade that backup point guard position. Also, Jose Alvarado is a guy who gets hurt a lot. He's also a situational player, as you've seen in the playoffs. And Dallas has Tyson. Exactly. You see what I'm saying? They got a big in Dallas championship guy, the former defensive player of the year. Awesome. Tyson Chandler was awesome in his day. Same type of player as Lively is, and they got someone like that working with him. I don't know who was working with Jackson Hayes. I think Derek Favors was working with him a little bit. Two totally different type of players. And that's the thing. I don't really know who's in the building working with these young prospects aside from Fred Vincent working with guys on their jump shots. I know Teresa Witherspoon was working with Zion, and truthfully, that's probably one of the reasons you didn't see any development from Zion because he wasn't really working with anyone who realistically was pushing him or, helping take him to the next level. It was just him being handled with kid gloves. Griff, he was working with, man, David Griffin. I'm being honest with y'all. At one point, something came up. Oh yeah, you got Corey Brewer, but I think Corey was working with them more when he was like rehabbing and trying to come back from injury. But all right, so now you got, let's say David Griffin and Jackson Hayes. At one point, someone asked David Griffin about trading for Pascal Siakam, right? And David Griffin said, why would I trade for Pascal Siakam when I already got him in Jackson Hayes? That should tell you everything you need to know about David Griffin and his talent evaluation. That's a true story. That's a true story. Believe it or not, that's a true story. This man said, why should I trade for Pascal Siakam when I already have him in Jackson Hayes? Crazy. Insane. We don't have no dog. Yeah, all we really got, man, is Corey Brewer. And, you got Coach McGuire. You got a couple other guys that's on the staff. But it's the players also have to be willing to listen and receive the message. Also, man, you got to know who you're dealing with. If you know certain players only respond to being yelled at, you got to get some people who yell on the staff. If that's, you can't have this this choir boy mentality when you know certain players don't respond to that. And thus far, that's what we've seen with the Pelicans. You know, they got rid of all the people who like to yell and curse and brought in a bunch of people who like to hug and handhold. And that ain't working. That ain't working at all. So I mean, hopefully they pivot, man. And if there's a big trade that happens, I'll try to come back on. We'll talk about it, you know, evaluate it, do some breaking news. But that's been today's show, man. I appreciate everyone rocking with me. I'll see y'all tomorrow, man, with the draft. Let's hope everything goes well. Peace. I'm out.